Alliance, Harmonize, IntelliBoard, Information Age Publishing, Nearpod, Yamaha, and Yellow Dig, as well as our bronze sponsors, Anatomage, Arizona Telemedicine Program, Southwest Telehealth Resource Center, Enrollment Resources, Proctorio, Video 360, Viopta, Virtual Care, and Xanadu. Many thanks also to our USDLA friends, and to anyone out there who's interested in becoming a USDLA friend or a USDLA sponsor, please visit usdla.org to learn more or ask any one of us. And speaking of getting involved with the USDLA, if you are not already a member, please join us. We have so many different membership tiers for for-profit and nonprofit organizations, for individuals, for students, for retired. You will certainly find a membership tier that is perfect just for you. In terms of conferences, we will speak more about this later, but we hope to see you at our next year's national conference in Orlando, Florida. Please attend our Friday webinars. We have programming for you just about every Friday throughout the year. And our webinars are free, and they are a wealth of information, a great way to provide professional development to you and your organizations. We have an active LinkedIn group that would like to invite you to join and participate in. And also please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And lastly, if you would like to serve with us, please ask any one of us about becoming a board of directors member. Speaking of a board of directors, today we are joined by two board of directors member, our wonderful speaker, Dr. Shana Garrett, and Ms. Valerie Olejnik. Valerie, can I trouble you to come on camera and wave real quick? Valerie has been such an amazing help in co-producing this conference. I cannot express my gratitude enough. Thank you so much, Valerie. I appreciate you. And now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speaker today and our colleague on the USDLA Board of Directors, Dr. Shana Garrett. She began her career in education by driving the successes of two online graduate programs for Pepperdine University in educational technology, which she has led for over 20 years of progressive administrator experience in both online and ground platforms. Her administrator experience is supported by several years of faculty experience in both post-secondary education institutions, as well as serving as faculty at the North Texas Council of Government Regional Police Academy in Texas. Her business experience complements her education service by bringing over 30 years of program development, management, and transformation to her knowledge of proprietary education, as well as over 8 years of experience as a paralegal. She presents nationally and internationally on topics related to authentic leadership, academic readiness, and student success areas. And I don't know how she finds the time, but she also volunteers her time to serve the USDLA as an executive board member and as chair of our marketing and communications committee. So Dr. Garrett, thank you so much for everything that you do. The floor is yours. Please tell us about Pure Heart Leadership.
Oh, thank you, Gio. I appreciate you so much. And first and foremost, I want to thank you and everybody at USDLA for all the amazing work that you do and the advocacy that you do for distance education. And it's just an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here. So thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy week to join us today to talk about something that really impacts all of us, and that's leadership. And I realize it's Friday afternoon. I know you're probably winding down your week. And so for those reasons and so many more, I really appreciate you being here today so that we can talk about something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. I know for many of us, leadership is something that we really live and breathe every single day in our workplace, and something that we think about, whether it's our particular style or it's the various styles that we interact with folks in the office. So if you're okay, we can go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen really quickly. Can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation? If somebody can just give me a absolutely, a yes, and a heck yes. Awesome. Can you just see the one slide or can you see them all?
Right now, the presentation hasn't started, so we see your entire.
How about now?
Yeah.
Just the one slide?
Perhaps from slideshow, if we do, if we click from current slide, let's see what that looks like.
Right, that's what I'm showing right now. Is I just have the primary slide.
Yes, we see that. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so as Gio mentioned, I am Dr. Shana Garrett. I am currently the Dean for the College of Psychology and Community Services with Walden University. I have been in distance education for over 20 years, and it is absolutely a passion of mine to be part of something so incredibly progressive and dynamic and serves our students so exceptionally well. And so what I'm sharing with you today is an approach, a concept, a method that I developed many, many years ago, and it's entitled Pure Heart Leadership. And so you're probably wondering, why are we, what's the value here? What are we talking about when it comes to leadership? And the truth is, folks, leadership's changed over the years. It's not the same. It's morphed, it's changed, it's flexed, it's not flexed. It's done a ton of different moves, and we value and appreciate and recognize the impact that leadership has with us. And so what I wanted to share with you today is give you a little bit of context and a little bit of history about why authentic leadership is so incredibly important. And then towards the latter part, I'm going to give you some techniques, maybe some ideas to consider, and some possible suggestions that you can take to incorporate into your leadership style. And so I think many of us have heard that people don't quit a job, they quit the boss, right? And for many folks, especially now that we've been through 2 years of COVID, feel like we have some really unanswered callings in our workplace, and maybe we're not really chasing our passion like we thought we were, or we should be chasing. And scary enough, Gallup had a tremendous study where over 7,000, about approximately it was about 10,000 individuals were surveyed, and over 7,200 came back, and 50% of the employees said that they were looking to get out of their job just to get away from their manager. Folks, that's pretty significant. That's a pretty strong statement to say that you're looking to leave because of a supervisor. And I suspect if we were all face to face in an environment and having a conversation, we all have those stories to share, right? We all have probably experienced a nightmare supervisor, manager, leader, whatever the case may be, right? So we could all share those stories. But the truth is that those things just didn't happen overnight, right? There's some solutions, there's some options, there's some opportunities. So for today, I want to talk a little bit about the leadership foundation for Pure Heart Leadership. We're going to talk about some strategies. I'm going to provide some opportunities to have your teams collaborate, and we're going to talk about how to make a bit of a difference. And so again, you're probably saying, okay, Shana, well, this is not really new information for me, but why is it so important? Here's why it's important. There is a mix of elements that come together that really drive why poor leadership impacts businesses. It impacts morale, productivity, and teams. 51% of workers are looking to leave their jobs because of leadership. 40% of employees are considering employment outside of their current organization. 34% said they're looking to leave their current role within the next 12 months. But here's what was staggering to me as I was building research for Pure Heart, and that is that 30% that entry-level employees, the cost to post the job, interview, hire, onboard Just to replace an entry-level employee, it's 30 to 50% of their annual salary. And the higher you go up in titles and level, the more staggering that number becomes. When you look at mid-level employees, to replace that person, it's 150% of their annual salary. High-level, highly specialized employees, 400% of their annual salaries. That's pretty significant. And then when you look to the next figure, that 47% of Americans would leave their ideal job, even if it meant less pay, that really resonates how incredibly powerful and important good leadership is. So you're probably wondering, okay, pure heart leadership sounds slick. What does it mean? Truth is, it's not about warm and fuzzy hugs. It's not about everybody locking arms and being in harmony and everything's happy-go-lucky and everything's great. It's really not. Pure heart leadership means that you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And more often than not, that's just helping people, right? It's about not involving your ego in doing anything or not strategically thinking about where I can go with this and how I can do this. It's about coming from a place of pure heart. You're just looking to help somebody. You're just looking to support somebody. You're looking to do it with a pure heart. So how did this come about? Well, my background is psychology. I was very fortunate to study at several institutions that really invested in humanistic psychology. And so for me, there were three individuals that really had a strong influence over my studies. And that would be Carl Rogers, Albert Bandura, and Albert Maslow. And then over the last 20 so years, with work experience in the legal industry, nonprofits, and higher education, really saw some of their major concepts come to life, particularly as it related to leadership. And then also anything and everything that has to do with authentic leadership, man, I really try to get my hands on it and read it just to see if there's something new, if there's something different, if there's a different perspective. And then culminating in this incubation period, if you will, was really developing a mindfulness practice just to help, with quality of life. So let's talk about these guys just a little bit. Carl Rogers, if you're not familiar with Carl Rogers, I highly recommend picking up one of his books. For him, there was a lot to be said for the power of self. And he also really believed in what I call the 3 to thrive, and that's congruence, which is just being really genuine, be really real, unconditional positive regard, which includes acceptance and caring, and empathetic understanding, right? It's the ability to understand another person. And so for me, one of the first lessons that I really learned about congruence was living in Los Angeles. I'm born and raised Texan. You might not hear my accent right now, but I assure you, if I get fired up about something, if I get excited about something, if I'm talking to anybody in my family, the twang starts, right? And so it was really interesting for me to learn living in Los Angeles that not everybody knew how to speak Texan, didn't understand the analogies or the different styles. But I needed to learn to be comfortable with who I was. And I found that space of not everybody's going to come at it from the same perspective or the same way. And there was something unique and different about that. We all have that gift and that ability. We all have that talent. It's just tapping into it, right? So again, Carl Rogers, self-actualization, 3 to thrive, some really great resources and information out there if you're interested. Albert Bandura. So one of the most amazing gifts that Bandura gave us was social learning theory. And that basically means that between your interactions with individuals, people will adapt, learn, and initiate behavior that they observe, and then they watch to see how it's reinforced. So my challenge to you is think back to any time that you've been in team meetings or work dynamics or work situations, and you watched how things kind of unfolded, or you would hear information and then you would watch how folks react. That again is social learning theory. We all participate in it. We all see it happening. Gio, I see your hand up. Do we have something in the chat?
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to ask if the intent was to stay on the first slide or if we were supposed to see slides advancing because we're still seeing the title slide.
Oh, no. Okay. No, I was on down the road. Okay. So what do you see now?
Okay. Now we're seeing the slide scroll. So we're seeing the very practice of management, Jim Clifton.
Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, technology is our friend today, right, folks? Oh my goodness.
No worries,
no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Okay, so give me just, I bet in 30 seconds I can recap us and get us back up to speed, and I won't make anybody's head spin. You ready? Awesome. Okay. So when I talk about people quitting the boss, not the job, that's the lovely slide with the gentleman with the phone with holding the phone up, right? Here's our agenda, where you can see that mind and heart and brain are all together. This is the information about the percentage of salaries. You with me so far? Gio, are they advancing?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Aha, fantastic. Okay. So here's my fancy slide on defining pure heart. There are the gentlemen that I've been talking about, Carl Rogers, Bandura, and Maslow. There's Carl Rogers. There's the 3 to Thrive. Everybody seeing that okay? All right. And now we're on to Bandura, and we're talking about social learning theory. All right, I think I did that in 30 seconds. All right, thanks for hanging in there, folks. I appreciate it. So when I was chatting about Bandura, really it's about watching how folks are interacting and watching what's being reinforced, right? And one of his best statements that I found that's applicable to leadership and definitely team dynamics is that learning is a culmination of various variables such as observation, imitation, modeling, and all of that plays a role in our learning processes. So that's why I've included Bandura, because I think that's incredibly important, especially with leadership. And I think as you watch your dynamics in your office space and in with your organization, you can certainly see that happening. Maslow is actually Abraham Maslow, my apologies. I think most are familiar with Maslow in his hierarchy of needs. If you are, fantastic, there's a wonderful little chart for you. If you're not, highly recommend you get your hands on anything about Maslow, because it certainly describes our need for actualization and having needs met. And one of his favorite quotes, or actually one of my favorite quotes of his, is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail, right? And so Maslow talks about the importance of having your needs met and having that satisfaction in order to move through the various stages to become more self-actualized. So you're probably going, okay, well, Shana, that's, again, good information to have, really appreciate it. But how does that play into leadership? It plays on a lot of different fronts. The way we present in the workplace isn't just our leadership style. It's everything about us, right? It's our personality. It's our mindset. It's our mind, our body, our soul, our personality. It's the mood we're in that particular day. Everything presents when you come into the office. We're human beings. We can't separate them into compartments and just say this person, this part of my personality is showing up today, right? It's a full package. And so that's why understanding who you are and what your strengths and abilities are, also what your opportunities are, that's what helps you to become more in touch with your authentic self. And then from there, build upon your authentic leadership style. So as we go through the next couple of slides, I just wanted to throw a couple of things out there about good boss versus bad boss. It tends to be one of the favorite slides because some folks will look at the list of good boss and go, yep, seen it, had it, got it, I'm that. And some will see the bad boss and go, oh yeah, I remember when. So I'm going to give you a second to look through the list. And Gio, I see your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. We have a request. If we could possibly look at the slide in a bigger format, maybe to go ahead and play the slide rather than showing because it's at 62% right now. It's a little bit blurry. It's a little bit tough for folks to see.
Okay.
Either that, or we could go in slideshow and play, if that doesn't mess your notes.
No,
Okay.
I had it in slideshow earlier, but
Okay. Could I trouble you to swap displays, because now we're seeing the one with the notes. We're seeing the speaker side. Mm-hmm.
So that?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. All right.
It's much easier to see. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
You bet. No. All good. All good. Again, technology, it's a wonderful thing, right? So, okay. So, good boss, bad boss. Let's move forward. So, why is that important? At the heart of all of our leaderships, right, and our working relationships, it's about relationships. Okay. And so what I'd like to share with you are some strategies about how to create effective relationships. And so on one side, you're going to see I have a category of ideas and suggestions and applications for teams, right? So if you are a leader leading a team, make sure you're setting strategic goals with your team. Make sure that they're having input. Make sure that you're building upon the strengths of the team. Take the time to identify and address gaps and opportunities that you have on the team. Maybe you need external support. Maybe there's needs for positions. Is the team able to shift, right? How are you interacting with the team? What's in your approach? Look beyond the immediate team. And what I mean by that is one of the tools that I use with my colleagues is work swarms. I kind of smile when I say that, because there's been a lot of giggles about work swarms. If you're not familiar with work swarms, highly recommend them. But basically, you pull together a group of stakeholders or invested colleagues on a particular problem, and you brainstorm some solutions. Everything's on the table, right? But it's a creative way to get at problem solving, because the group just comes together for that one time. It happens and everybody goes about their merry way, right? But it's something different than the usual approach. Some leaders use skip levels, where you meet with the team, either the team that reports to your team or vice versa, right? Skip levels can be an effective way to build relationships. And then there's networking interest. You know, I would feel pretty certain that if you're working in distance education, we share a common interest in distance education. Just depends on what aspect of it. Is it the education part? Is it the technology? Is it about the collaboration? Is it about shared resources? Is it about K through 12? Is it higher ed? All of those within your team dynamics, these are elements that help build effective relationships. Now, on an individual level, it obviously gets a little bit more one-on-one, right? A little bit more specific. So make sure you're having one-on-ones with your team, right? Make sure you're having conversations with them on a fairly regular and consistent basis. You know, afford some time to get to know the individual or your colleague. Know what their interests are, know what motivates them, know what they're looking to do and what they're investing in. I'm incredibly fortunate that I work with some amazing colleagues that we have a lot of shared interest outside of our passion for positive social change and for education. So we definitely do our updates about how all of our dogs are doing, family members, kiddos, things of that nature. That's a good thing to do. Gio, I see your hand up.
No, I was just clapping in agreement. That's wonderful. That's what you would think every leader and team ought to do, but that's not always the case, though.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, we juggle a lot, right, in the workplace nowadays. If it's not, individual deliverables, team deliverables, organizational goals, then it's the day-to-day activities, and then it becomes all the immediate fires. And, I call them my oh my goshes, right, where something's gone sideways and now you've got to get everybody together. So sometimes these things fall off the calendar, or it's I'll get to it type of thing. But I have found that consistently meeting with folks, if nothing else, just to check in makes a huge difference, right? Also checking in with goals, taking the opportunity to review strengths. Love to do idea presentations, both directions, right? You should both be getting something out of the meetings. And I think that's a little bit of that lifelong learner aspect that many of us have working within education, is that you're always looking to learn something new and different. And we all have that to bring on a daily basis. Definitely, if you have the opportunity to compliment, do it all day long. If you have opportunity to give feedback, make sure it's constructive and make sure that, there's something substance to it, so that if there needs to be some adjustments, everybody's on the same page and they're working towards that goal. And I think one of the biggest challenges with leadership in particular is getting feedback, right? It's being vulnerable to not only give feedback, but ask for it as well. And I assure you that if you practice it, it gets a little bit easier with every single time. I know I certainly do it with my team. It could be on a big idea. It could be just an email draft, right? But feedback can be a great way to learn more about your style, but also your approach and really being effective. So a couple more applications here to share with folks. And one of the things that I love about Pure Heart is that you don't have to do all of these in order for you to be all about authentic, right? You can pick and choose what works for you and what's true and authentic to your style, right? Because I think we all know if somebody's not being authentic, you can tell, right? It comes across. So if you look at these lists and you pick up one or two, that's absolutely fantastic. If you pick up even more, that's great. If you want to brainstorm, my contact information is at the very end. I'm happy to always do a virtual coffee and to talk about it. But here's some additional applications for you as a leader. As you're developing your authentic approach, one of the things that I incorporate is a SMART meeting. They tend to be pretty simple. They're pretty mindful about topics and time. They're authentic. If any of my colleagues are here today, I think you will all agree with me that we definitely laugh and we try to have some fun. We're realistic. We're just really honest about what we can and can't do at that time. And it's very transparent, right? We do look to make sure that there are strategic, tactical, and growth goals. There's quite a bit of assessment as far as self and leader. Again, that goes back to being willing to be vulnerable to get feedback and invest in your development, right? Nobody knows your goals better than you. So be an active participant in crafting what you want your leadership legacy to be, right? So that's for you as a leader. Now for your teams, my challenge to you is, do you really know your team? What are the commonalities that you have among your team and you can build upon? With the same sense of balance, what are some of the deficits that you need? What can they bring? I can tell you right now, statistics and I have a really rocky relationship, right? So I have folks that I work with in my organization that if I need something that's really going to be impressive and really in that kind of detail, I know exactly who to go to and ask for help, right? So make sure when it comes to your teams, you have that same awareness about what their strengths and abilities are. And really focus on building and empowering your team about their authentic skills and talents. We all have them, right? So we should be building each other up and strengthening each other on those skills. And I see something in the chat. Is there a question or comments?
Wendy was chiming in and she was saying that before the pandemic, she was the only remote worker on her team of 5 people. And she always had these feelings of being disconnected from the team. But after her boss had an experience with remote working, Wendy finally felt like, she got how to be part of a remote team.
Awesome. Wendy, thank you for that. I actually am going to touch on that in just a second. But absolutely, absolutely. I think, well, I'll say, but we've got another slide to go and then we'll jump into it. So thank you for that, Wendy. I appreciate you. Back on the teams, do you know where your team wants to go in their careers? Do you know? You should, right? Ask them. And I know for me, I didn't have a lot of supervisors that would say to me, "Hey, Shana, where do you want to be? Shana, what do you want to do?" Right? And so I told myself, if I ever get into a leadership position, those are some of the things that I have learned along the way, that I was going to do something different. I wasn't going to ignore that for my team, right? Because I had one supervisor who did that for me, and it was some of the best mentoring I ever received. But know what your team wants to do and where they want to go. It's a really easy conversation to have, and it communicates so much about your interest in them and how you have opportunities to be invested and to help empower them wherever their journeys may go, right? And know what their passions are, know what motivates them, what are their abilities, right? Those are important things to know, because as a leader, at some point in time, you're going to need that information in which to meet objectives, to help push them to where they need to go in terms of, maybe it's motivation, maybe it's a stretch assignment, whatever that may look like, right? It's important to know those things, because not everybody motivates and encourages and drives in the same way, much like our abilities and our gifts are different. Now it's not moving for me. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I do realize that we have a part of our population that do work in academics. And so I did include a slide here specifically about academic leadership, but much of it does translate into corporate America. It translates into business just as well. But you've heard me talk about this, about investing in your teams. Acknowledge their efforts. I have to tell you, so many times, the best motivator is just saying thank you. And I appreciate you. And I appreciate what you're doing for us, right? Sometimes it's just saying thank you. I appreciate you. Look for opportunities to develop. If you're not actively looking for it, ask them. Ask them for what they're looking to do. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. It could be something really as easy as, I want to do a particular workshop, or what do you think about this book? Or, hey, what's the latest and greatest podcast that you're picking it up, right? Everybody's always looking to do something a little bit different. So open the lines of communication. For academics in particular, there's definitely workshops, professional memberships, sabbaticals, things of that nature. Those are things that definitely demonstrate a collaborative and an authentic working relationship. Conveying confidence, right? Acknowledge risks, acknowledge issues, concerns, be willing to express those, be willing to talk about them. But most importantly, be prepared to be resilient. It's not necessarily the fact that you finished, it was the fact that you were persistent and you were resilient and you finished, right? Be transparent. Communicate as much as you possibly can, whether it's emails, calls, meetings, whatever the case may be. Be open, be transparent, communicate. Even if you don't think it's a big deal, I promise you, others think it's a big deal. And I have shared with my teams for many years, there are going to be times that I can share everything that I get my hands on. There are going to be times that it's confidential and I can't. And I know that that's not ideal, but at least you know that I can hold confidences and not share when I'm asked not to share. So that's part of leadership. That's at every level of leadership, right? But when you can communicate clear, communicate effectively. And I believe that teams at all levels appreciate that, right? Update where you can. And those lines of communication also help with motivation, right? Take responsibilities for your team, take responsibilities for removing barriers, provide the feedback, delegate to empower, and work together as a team. And again, it goes back to, you're building effective relationships, you're communicating, you know where your strengths are, You know where your gaps are, right? You're all in it together. Okay, see something in the chat? Yes, yes. Thank you. That being acknowledged and thanked is a great motivator. I agree. Thank you. So a little bit about career progression. And I think many know this, and particularly if you're in higher ed, really academic institutions, they're complex communities. I think a lot of our organizations are complex communities, right? So it's about doing your job. It's about your level of investment and engagement with what you're doing, but it's also the relationships that you're building both with your team, but also with your colleagues. Learn from the victories, learn from the setbacks, build the relationships. One of my favorites is accept change as a constant variable, because it is. And I can say that I remember very vividly when I had started my very first job in distance education, and I called my dad and I said, I'm going into distance education. And he just said, so you're not going to go into real estate? I said, no, Dad, I'm going into distance education. And he said, well, okay. And I just remember thinking that there's been so much change within distance education over the last however many years. And I look particularly at the last 2 years with COVID, and to watch so many have to quickly adjust to an environment that we've all been in for so many years, right? It's a different space, it's a different approach, it's a different mindset, it's a different skill set, right? But change is a constant. And I think the last 2 years have really shown us. So if you can find a comfort level in embracing change, that just puts you so far ahead of the game as a leader. It really, really does, right? And so the other thing about Pure Heart is that for all of the intention and the mindfulness to doing development and empowerment, it's also about holding people accountable. It's about holding yourself accountable. It's about just recognizing where you have strengths, you have opportunities, and how you're connecting with others. So again, this slide is really, I dive a little bit here into about deans and chairs and program directors and core faculty. I'm not going to read you the slide, it's there, but the quote that I wanted to share with you that was really pretty strong was that we often revert to intellectual approaches when the emotional approaches would be more effective. Sometimes we don't need the perfect answer. We just need to be heard. We just need to feel like we've been heard and that somebody understands. Right? I think that's an important component to being a leader. Now, here are some of the mistakes that I've seen throughout the years, and I always enjoy doing this presentation live and in person with folks when we're face to face, to just watch the reactions to some of these, because there's some really good stories behind the eye rolling or the vigorous head shaking yes, right? But here are some of the mistakes that I see leaders making from time to time, and that's micromanaging. It's poor or ineffective communication. It's not sharing information. It's not listening. It's not being available. Maybe you're leading with your ego. Maybe you're just in it for yourself. And true to my Texas ways, this is something I say, is that they're just not giving a rip about their team, right? That's not a Yellowstone reference. It's just a Texas phrase. But those are some of the mistakes that we've seen, right? And so coming off of 2 years of COVID and everything else, it's not surprising there's a state of burnout. And I truly believe that leadership can play a role in mitigating burnout, especially pure heart leadership, especially your authentic approach to leadership. Because for burnout, it's about feeling exhausted. It's about being overextended. It may be unrealistic workloads. Maybe it's a lack of clarity. All these things build upon each other to create kind of that perfect storm of burnout, right? And so for many of the examples that I had shared earlier, you can see how if you're effectively communicating, if you're invested in your team, if you know what they want, if you have a sense of how they're doing and what their needs are, you can see how you can mitigate some of these elements of burnout, which is very, very real, right? And so the other thing that's happening that we're seeing, in addition to burnout, and then you've heard about the quiet, the great resignation, now we have quiet quitting. There's some really interesting perspectives and research out there about quiet quitting. But one that really grabbed my attention was from SHRM, where they were interviewing approximately 1,300 HR executives about quiet quitting. And you can see the numbers for yourself. It's really kind of shocking that they're reporting that 51% of those HR professionals say that quiet quitting is actively existing in their organization. 83% say it's a direct relation to decrease in morale. 70% decline in productivity. 50% diminished work product. 43% noted productivity is a concern within their organization. This is continuing to happen because there are gaps in leadership, particularly authentic leadership, as it relates to connecting with individuals, working with them, and having an understanding of what's going on. Now, Wendy, you made a comment about the remote work environment and virtual world. For many of us, we've been in the virtual world for a really long time. For others, it's quite the adjustment, right? So how do you go about bridging those two different worlds? Well, I recommend a couple of different things. One of the things that I do to stay in touch with colleagues is I do virtual coffees. We meet for 30 minutes. It's just to talk about things in life. We don't necessarily have to talk about work, but it's just about connecting with folks, right? There's so many different activities, games, things of that nature that you can play in a team meeting that definitely can break the ice, that definitely can make a difference. And it's not all just work related. We also do some really mindful practicing about meetings. If it can get covered in an email, send it in an email. It doesn't necessarily be a Zoom meeting. Zoom fatigue is real, folks. I think for many of us, and Gio, I see you nodding. I know many of us, at the end of the day, you've just wrapped up your 10th or 12th Zoom meeting. You're exhausted, right? That's in addition to wrangling either spouses, children, or pets behind you, which we all kind of do, or any type of, distraction. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to combat what the new change is, right? And so figuring out that, you can put some boundaries in place. You can balance your calendar a little bit better. You can delegate. I have at least 1 or 2 days of the month that I have one calendar day. I don't put meetings on there. I have a notice that says if you're putting a meeting on my calendar, let's talk about it first, right? Because sometimes you just need the quiet to work and to do the things that you're doing, right? So those are a couple of different strategies and approaches that you can try to put in some boundaries and some nice little safeguards for what you're trying to do. And so as I was getting ready for today, I thought, burnout, the great resignation, quiet quitting, these are all challenges that we're facing as leaders. And it's really been coming on strong. And I thought, wonder why now? And I'm going to take you back because it's about creating effective relationships, right? You've seen the slide before. It's about the relationships you're creating, not only with who you are as a leader, but with your team and your colleagues. And so that's why it's so incredibly important to invest in yourself and what you're looking to do. So I wanted to just share with you a couple of benefits of this approach and the strategy, and I've used it for many, many years. And that is that first you need to develop your own authentic self. What are your gifts? What are your talents? What are your things that make you unique, right? Embrace them. Be proud of them. Be confident in them. Build effective and empowered relationships at every level. For a lot of us, working in higher ed or working in education, period, especially distance education, our paths cross. They do. And so use those opportunities to network, right? That's what we're here to do, is to network. Create effective and dynamic working relationships with your colleagues, with your teams, with others. all of those things serve to really support and sustain your career. But it also gives you a sense of enjoyment, engagement, and it really fuels the passion that you have for what you do, right? It should. So here are a couple of key takeaways. You've heard me mention them a couple of times, but really invest in yourself. Figure out what it is that you want to do, how you want to do it, and what your legacy, what you want that to look like. Find an appropriate mentor. That's always been a great recommendation, suggestion. You're going to find some great ones. You'll learn some wonderful things. You might find a couple of mentors that you're like, I don't know, but you can always turn a positive into it and go, okay, well, that's not something that I would do. So, you have a little bit of awareness there. Create your own professional development plan. Really, unless you're getting a coach or something of that nature, take the bull by the horns, figure out your own professional plan and what you want to do and how you want to be a contributor to your industry. Stay current with trends, industries, and personnel. Can't recommend that enough. Follow up with folks. Stay consistent. Demonstrate your commitment and your care for colleagues, even if it's just dropping a note to say, hey, I'm thinking about you, or hey, just want to say thanks for all that you do. That's a great way to show appreciation and gratitude. And it makes you feel good at the same time, right? Because you're sharing with somebody that they made a difference in your life somewhere down the road and that you didn't forget about it. That's a real nice pure heart move, right? And then follow through. You're dedicating your time and your energy and your attention to an organization. Give that same commitment to your team, to your colleagues, right? You get it back. So this slide in particular is a culmination of books that I have read over the years, and I've included with Pure Heart. And I've been very fortunate that I've actually met several of these authors and spent time with them discussing authentic leadership. I highly recommend all these books. If you want to know more, or if there's a particular area that you would like to ask me about as it relates to all this, I am just an email, text message away to share anything and everything. And look, my academics is showing. There's my references for the presentation. And then here's a couple of ways that you can get a hold of me, right? There's my email. Pure Heart has its own Instagram. If you, I have a little motivation board there. So if you want to go and find something that kind of speaks to you, motivates you, by all means, please do so. LinkedIn, my colleagues will tell you that I am about LinkedIn. I'm usually posting, reposting, hashtagging. I'm just all kinds of dangerous out on LinkedIn. And then that's connected to my Twitter, so I'm even more dangerous there. And then if you're interested in the book, there it is. I did not create the artwork for that. I'm about as creative as, a crayon and a piece of paper. It's not that fancy. But I just love talking about authentic leadership, and I love talking about connecting with folks, creating relationships. And so if there are any questions, if there's anything that I can do, if there's anything I can answer, happy to do so.
Thank you so much. And the artwork on your book is amazing. It's so beautiful, and it embodies the spirit of Pure Heart leadership so well. Speaking of Pure Heart, Darlene is asking, how do you find Pure Heart leadership differs from servant leadership, or does it?
Oh, wow, Darlene, great question. Truthfully, I've been called servant leader at various times in my career. I think if there is a difference, is that with Pure Heart, you're really coming from a place of being focused on that one person and what is best for that situation, rather than the organization. I think I tend to look at servant leadership as being a bit more of the organization, whereas with Pure Heart, I think it's more about the person. Does that help?
I hope so. And Darlene, if you'd like more information, please let us know.
Yeah.
Meg is asking, could you please show us the reference slide once again? And Sharon is saying she would like to see the slide that defines pure heart.
All right. So y'all are really getting me to get fancy with the technology, aren't you? Okay. Tell me if the references, is that showing?
Yes.
Okay. And if you're not seeing what you want, holler at me and I can email it to you.
Thank you so much. And Maggie, we're going to have the slides posted on the conference website so you can, check them out one by one. And then Sharon was wanting to see that definition slide for pure heart.
Yeah. Doing the right thing for the right reasons, and that's helping others.
Love it. Okay. And then I have a question. I remember hearing about virtual coffee from you for the first time about 2 years ago, maybe a year or two ago. I was in Germany, and I had this vision of the Star Trek food replicator that creates this virtual coffee. Could you just talk a little bit about what virtual coffee is from a leadership standpoint? What does it do for the team members, for the team as a whole? How is it a good leadership practice?
Absolutely. Thank you. Great question. So I've been doing virtual coffees for several years. Gio, I love the fact that you called me out on that. I've probably been doing them for about 5 years. And I started doing them as a way to connect with folks. So it's not a meeting. There's no agenda. I just reach out to folks that, for whatever reason, our paths haven't crossed, whether we've worked together in the past or whether we're in the same institution. And so it's just a way to connect with folks and to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you doing? How are things? What's going on? And what I have found to be of such value is that folks really like to connect. We can talk about things that are work related. We might not talk about things that are work related. It's just about sustaining the workship. And so from a leadership perspective, what I've also found to be helpful is in just checking in and talking with folks and reconnecting. Sometimes we share updates like, well, I'm working on this. Well, did you think about this? Well, no. And would you like to do some research on that? Or, hey, I'm thinking about doing this project, or, whatever the case may be. So sometimes you have conversations that don't necessarily go the way you think they're going to go or you had planned. And that opens itself up to a whole nother possibility of collaboration and perspective and insight into folks. So for me, it's a nice personal way of not having a meeting.
I'm so grateful to you. I started walking in your footsteps with this practice, and it's been such a great way to just show the team that we may be working in a virtual environment, but we're here for one another and we care about one another. And as you were saying earlier, we want to know how everybody's family is doing, how their pets are doing, does anybody need anything? It's a good way to kind of take the temperature of the team and the general mood. And thank you. I'm so grateful to you for teaching me that practice.
Oh, you know what? It's my pleasure. And honestly, when you think about it, folks, we spend more time with our work colleagues than we do with our family and our friends, right? So why wouldn't you invest in who they are and what they're doing? To me, that's one of the great benefits of who you work with is that you get to know them as individuals, and you get to share your lives with them because you spend so much time with them. So I'm just tickled that you're doing that. I think that's absolutely awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Speaking of leadership, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that today is Veterans Day, and we honor the brave men and women who have served this country. Thank you for your courage, service, sacrifice, and leadership.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Shana, thank you so much. It's always such a treat to hear you speak, to learn from you, to be inspired by you, to be, to feel this just pure heart, right? This commitment that makes me want to turn around and just be with my team and acknowledge the amazing work that they're doing. So speaking of that, we are joined by Valerie, another team member, and we still have Wendy. No, okay. Valerie, would you be so kind to tell us a little bit about what's coming down the pipe from USDLA? And I don't know, I'm trying to find a baton here to
So, well, yeah, a pen or something. We can pretend it was. There we go. There we go.
I like the creativity. That's nice.
We do. Okay, so for me, you're kind of here, so we'll pass it along. But thank you. I got it. See, there we go. Well, you can't see because of the Zoom. There we go.
Nice.
So yes, thank you, Gio. And thank everybody for coming this week. And I hope all of you right now are scheduling some time to meet with someone on your calendar. I hope I kind of was doing that as I was listening to Shana. It's always a good, I also have the practice she has of blocking out some time where I go, nope, nobody, this is busy time, this is scheduled. So I hope, I encourage you all to, take that moment as we're wrapping things up. But as Gio said, we're sort of passing into the next phase. And this is one of our sort of premier special events of the year that we do each November. But we do have coming even next week, every Friday, almost, we skip around because of the holidays and things, but almost every Friday we do offer free, that's everybody's favorite word, free Friday webinars. And those are from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern each week. So we encourage you to check out the newsletter that you'll be receiving weekly, and that always tells you what's coming up. I mentioned earlier today that the next session, next Friday on the 18th, is Maria Elena Hernandez, and she is going to be telling us why watching too much television made her a better instructional designer. So that's coming up for all my instructional designer friends out there now. But the topics range across the board, and we always welcome your feedback. I know I spoke with Gio earlier, and many of you have already been sending in some wonderful suggestions of what you would like to see, and that really is how we do our programming. We don't just pull things out of a hat. We really listen to you and try to find the best speakers we can that meet those topics that you want to hear about. And speaking of speakers, so if you are a speaker or you know a speaker or you want to be a speaker, feel free to reach out to me or someone else on the team, because you might be a good fit for one of the Fridays, or even better, we'll be opening the call for proposals for the national conference, which you might have heard is next July 17th through 20th in sunny Orlando. So you'll have some fun things you can do in addition to having some amazing conference experiences. So that call for proposals, I don't have the exact date, but look for announcements after Thanksgiving holiday. We'll have a better idea of giving you an exact date, but start getting your ideas together about what you might like to present, or as I said, send us feedback about what you would like to see. So we do mark your calendar, save the date for that week in July. And over the coming weeks and months, you'll be getting a lot more information about that. And as always, we'll be updating the website with information as we have it. And registration would be open earlier in next year, which I can't believe is so close, but there it is. It's not that far away. So yeah, so stay tuned for all of those things. That's the big news. I feel like I'm at the anchor desk. That's the big news for today.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you, Shana. Thank you everyone for joining. It was such a pleasure to host you once again for the 15th time under the umbrella of National Distance Learning Week. Hope that the Leadership Conference inspired you. We hope that the speakers that we had, maybe lit a little spark that's going to